The frozen wind cut through Olivia Reed's threadbare dress like knives as she huddled against the wooden post outside the Elko, Nevada saloon, watching her breath rise in white clouds while her body trembled so violently she thought her bones might crack. It was January 1883, and the winter had descended on this mining town with a vengeance that seemed personal, like God himself had decided the roughnecks and gamblers and working girls who made their living in these dusty streets deserved punishment for their sins. Olivia had arrived 3 days ago on a stagecoach that had deposited her here with nothing but the clothes on her back and 17 cents in her pocket, running from a past that clawed at her heels like a starving dog. She had thought Nevada might offer her a fresh start, but what she found instead was a town suspicious of strangers, especially young women traveling alone with haunted eyes and no explanation for their presence. The saloon doors swung open, releasing a burst of warmth and raucous laughter that made her shivering worse by comparison. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his shirt. He paused on the wooden walkway, adjusting his hat, and in that moment his eyes caught hers. Most men in Elko looked at her with either suspicion or a particular kind of hunger that made her skin crawl, but this man's expression shifted immediately to concern. "Miss, you are going to freeze to death out here," he said, his voice carrying a gentle quality that seemed incongruous with his rugged appearance. Without waiting for her response, he shrugged out of the heavy sheepskin coat he wore and stepped toward her. Olivia flinched instinctively, pressing harder against the post, but he stopped a respectful distance away and held the coat out to her. "Please, take it. The temperature is dropping fast and that dress is not nearly warm enough." She stared at him, then at the coat, her mind struggling to process this unexpected kindness. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago and her feet felt like blocks of ice in her worn boots. Still, she hesitated. "Why would you do that?" "Because you are cold and I have a coat," he said simply. When she did not move, he took another small step forward and gently draped the coat around her shoulders. The warmth that radiated from the sheepskin lining was almost painful against her frozen skin, and before she could stop herself, a small sound escaped her throat, something between a gasp and a sob. "Nobody has been kind before," she whispered, pulling the coat tighter around herself. The words slipped out unbidden, a confession she had not meant to make, but the sudden warmth and the unexpected gentleness had cracked something inside her that she had been keeping carefully sealed. The man studied her face for a long moment, and she wondered what he saw there. At 22, she felt ancient, worn down by circumstances that had taught her to expect cruelty as a baseline and to treat indifference as a gift. "Well, that is a damn shame," he said finally. "My name is James Quinn. Most folks around here call me Quinn. I work at the Double J Ranch about 5 miles north of town." "Olivia Reed," she said softly. "I do not have anywhere to call me from." Quinn glanced up at the darkening sky where heavy clouds promised more snow before morning. "Have you eaten today?" She shook her head. The 17 cents in her pocket would not buy her much, and she had been saving it in case she needed to leave town quickly. That had been her experience so far in life, always needing to leave quickly. "Come on, then. The restaurant down the street serves a decent stew, and it will be a lot warmer inside than out here." He gestured in the direction of a building with lamplight glowing in its windows. "I cannot pay you back," Olivia said, hating how small her voice sounded but needing him to understand that she had nothing to offer in return for his kindness. "Did I ask you to?" Quinn replied, and there was no judgment in his tone, only a matter-of-fact quality that made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. She followed him down the wooden walkway, her feet unsteady beneath her. The coat hung past her knees, far too large for her slender frame, but it was the warmest she had been in days. Inside the restaurant, the owner, a round-faced woman named Margaret, greeted Quinn familiarly and showed them to a table near the potbelly stove that radiated blessed heat throughout the small space. As they settled into their chairs, Olivia studied Quinn more carefully. He looked to be in his late 20s, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years working outdoors and calluses on his hands that marked him as a man accustomed to hard labor. His eyes were a deep brown, almost black in the lamplight, and when he caught her looking at him, he offered a slight smile that transformed his serious face into something warmer. "So, Miss Reed, what brings you to Elko?" he asked after Margaret had taken their order and bustled away toward the kitchen. Olivia considered lying. She had become quite good at it over the years, spinning stories that sounded plausible enough to satisfy curiosity without revealing anything true. But something about Quinn's straightforward manner made her want to be honest, at least partially. "I needed to leave California," she said carefully. "I thought Nevada might offer better prospects, running from something or running toward something." The question was direct but not unkind. "Both, I suppose, or neither. I am not sure anymore." She wrapped her hands around the cup of coffee Margaret had brought, savoring the warmth seeping into her frozen fingers. "My father died 6 months ago. He was all I had. After he passed, the people he owed money to came looking for payment, and when I could not provide it, they suggested other ways I might settle his debts." She met his eyes then, wanting to see if understanding or disgust would appear there. "I left before they could make good on those suggestions." Quinn's jaw tightened, but his expression remained sympathetic. "That must have been frightening." "It was necessary," she corrected. "Fear is a luxury you cannot afford when survival is at stake." Their food arrived then, and Olivia had to restrain herself from falling on the bowl of stew like a starving animal. She forced herself to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of dignity, but each spoonful of the rich, meaty broth felt like salvation. Quinn ate his own meal in silence, seeming to understand that she needed time and space to satisfy her hunger before conversation could continue. When she finally set down her spoon, her bowl empty and her stomach fuller than it had been in weeks, she found him watching her with an expression she could not quite decipher. "Thank you," she said, "for the coat, for the meal, for not asking more questions than I can answer." "You are welcome," Quinn replied. "Now, we need to figure out where you are going to sleep tonight. The boarding house on 5th Street is run by a woman named Clara Patterson. She is stern but fair, and she does not tolerate any nonsense from men who might get ideas about women staying there alone. I can pay for a week and give you time to find work." "No," Olivia said quickly. "You have already done too much. I cannot accept more charity." "It is not charity if I am offering it freely," Quinn said. "And frankly, Miss Reed, I cannot in good conscience leave you on the street tonight knowing what will likely happen to you out there." She wanted to argue, but the truth was that she had no viable alternative. The night would be brutally cold, and she had nowhere to go. Pride was another luxury she could not afford. "Just the week," she said finally, "and I will find a way to repay you." Quinn nodded, and something in his eyes suggested he understood exactly what that agreement cost her. They left the restaurant together, and he walked her to the boarding house, where Mrs. Patterson, a thin woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, agreed to provide Olivia with a room after Quinn paid for 7 nights in advance. "Thank you," Olivia said again as they stood in the narrow hallway outside her room. She started to remove the coat, but Quinn held up a hand. "Keep it for now. I have others. You can return it when you find warmer clothes." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture of farewell. "Good night, Miss Reed. I hope tomorrow brings you better fortune." After he left, Olivia entered her small room and closed the door behind her, leaning against it as emotions she had been suppressing for months finally overwhelmed her. She slid down to sit on the floor, Quinn's coat still wrapped around her, and allowed herself to cry for the first time since her father had died. But these tears were different from the grief-stricken sobs she had shed in California. These tears carried a strange mixture of relief and confusion, and something that might have been hope, though she barely recognized it anymore. The next morning, Olivia woke to weak sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of her room. For the first moment of consciousness, she felt almost peaceful, warm under the wool blankets Mrs. Patterson had provided. Then memory returned the cold, Quinn's unexpected kindness, the reality of her situation, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing. She still had 6 days left of shelter, but that would pass quickly if she did not find work. Elko was a mining town, which meant the economy revolved around silver extraction and the businesses that supported the miners. There would be work available, but most of it would be the kind that Olivia desperately wanted to avoid. She had not escaped her father's creditors in California just to end up in similar circumstances here. After washing her face in the basin on the dresser and doing her best to make her worn dress presentable, she ventured downstairs to find Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her boarders. The older woman looked up as Olivia entered, her sharp gaze taking in every detail. "Coffee is on the stove. Help yourself. Breakfast is included in your rate," Mrs. Patterson said. "Eggs and toast this morning." "Thank you," Olivia said, pouring herself a cup of the strong, bitter coffee. "Mrs. Patterson, I am looking for work. Do you know of any respectable positions available in town?" The landlady cracked eggs into a skillet with practiced efficiency. "Respectable is a relative term in Elko, Miss Reed. The dress shop on Commercial Street has been looking for someone who can sew. The owner is a woman named Helen Foster. She is fair but demanding, and she does not pay much, but it is honest work." She glanced at Olivia's hands. "Can you sew?" "Yes, madam. My mother taught me before she died. I am not fancy with it, but I am competent." Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly. "Then I suggest you visit Mrs. Foster this morning. Tell her I sent you. That might carry some weight." After breakfast, Olivia made her way to the dress shop, still wearing Quinn's coat against the morning chill. The town looked different in daylight, less menacing but no more welcoming. Men moved along the wooden walkways with purpose, heading toward the mines or the businesses that would open their doors soon. A few women were visible too, carrying shopping baskets or sweeping the steps of their establishments. Most ignored Olivia, though a few cast curious glances her way. The dress shop occupied a narrow building wedged between a hardware store and a lawyer's office. Through the front window, Olivia could see bolts of fabric stacked on shelves and a dress form displaying a partially completed gown in deep blue silk. She took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. A bell above the door announced her entrance, and a woman emerged from the back room. Helen Foster was perhaps 40, with dark hair streaked with gray and an expression that suggested she had seen too much of the world to be easily impressed. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone neutral. "Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house suggested I speak with you about employment." "I understand you need someone who can sew." Mrs. Foster's eyes sharpened with interest. "Clara Patterson sent you. That is a recommendation worth something. What is your name?" "Olivia Reed, madam." "Show me your hands, Miss Reed." Olivia held out her hands, suddenly self-conscious of how rough they looked, the nails broken and the skin chapped from cold and hard living. But Mrs. Foster examined them with an assessing gaze that seemed to look beyond the immediate condition to something deeper. "You have worked with your hands before. Good. Pretty hands make poor seamstresses." She walked to a table where fabric scraps lay scattered and selected a piece of cotton along with a needle and thread. "Show me a running stitch, a backstitch, and a blind hem." For the next 20 minutes, Olivia worked while Mrs. Foster watched in silence. The stitches came back to her easily, muscle memory from countless hours sitting beside her mother as a girl, learning the craft that her mother had said every woman needed to know. When she finished, she handed the sample to Mrs. Foster and waited for judgment. The older woman examined the work closely, holding it up to the light from the window and running her fingers over the stitches. Finally, she nodded. "You are competent, as you said." "Not exceptional, but competent, and that is what I need. The position pays $5 a week. You will work 6 days, from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening with an hour break for lunch. I expect punctuality, discretion regarding my clients, and good workmanship." Can you meet those expectations? $5 a week was not much, but it was enough to pay for her room and food with a little left over. More importantly, it was respectable work that would allow her to hold her head up. "Yes, madam, I can meet those expectations." "Then you start tomorrow." 8 o'clock sharp. Do not be late." Olivia left the dress shop feeling lighter than she had in months. She had shelter for the week and now employment that would allow her to maintain that shelter. It was not much, but it was more than she had possessed 24 hours ago. As she walked back toward the boarding house, she found herself scanning the street, wondering if she might see Quinn and thank him properly for setting this chain of events in motion. She did not see him that day or the next, and she told herself it was for the best. He had shown her kindness when she needed it most, and she owed him a debt of gratitude, but allowing herself to dwell on him or the way his concern had made her feel was dangerous. She could not afford emotional attachments or distractions. She needed to focus on survival, on building a life in this harsh town where winter winds cut like razors and kindness was rare enough to be remarkable. The work at the dress shop proved demanding but satisfying. Mrs. Foster was exacting in her standards but fair in her treatment, and Olivia found herself learning new techniques and refining her skills. The other woman who worked in the shop, a widow named Sarah who was perhaps 35, was friendly in a reserved way, answering Olivia's questions but not prying into her background. It was exactly what Olivia needed: routine, purpose, and enough money to survive. 3 weeks passed. January's brutal cold gradually eased into early February, though the nights remained frigid. Olivia had moved from Mrs. Patterson's boarding house to a smaller, cheaper room above the general store, and she had purchased fabric to make herself a warmer dress. She was beginning to believe that she might actually build a stable life in Elko, that the demons from her past might not find her here. Then, on a Saturday afternoon as she was leaving the dress shop, she saw Quinn walking down the street toward her. He looked much as he had the night they met, though he wore a different coat, this one canvas rather than sheepskin. When he spotted her, his face broke into a smile that made something flutter in her chest, a sensation she immediately tried to suppress. "Miss Reed," he said, touching his hat brim in greeting as he approached. "I have been hoping to run into you. How are you faring?" "I am well, Mr. Quinn, thank you." She gestured at the dress shop behind her. "I found employment here. I have been working for Mrs. Foster for 3 weeks now." "That is excellent news. Helen Foster is a good woman to work for." He hesitated, then added, "I apologize for not checking on you sooner. Work at the ranch has been demanding. We have been dealing with sick cattle and broken fences and all the challenges that come with winter ranching." "You have no obligation to check on me," Olivia said, though part of her had wondered if his kindness had been a fleeting impulse he had forgotten as soon as he left the boarding house that night. "But I am glad to see you because I still have your coat. I have been keeping it at my room. If you tell me where you will be, I can bring it to you. Keep it a bit longer if you need it. The weather is still cold at night." He glanced up at the sky where clouds were gathering. "Though it looks like we might get more snow this evening. Are you heading home now?" "Yes, I have a room above the general store. May I walk with you? I need to pick up some supplies there anyway." They fell into step together, and Olivia found herself acutely aware of his presence beside her the way he matched his longer stride to her shorter one. The solid, reassuring bulk of him between her and the street. She had spent the past 3 weeks trying not to think about him, but now that he was here, all her careful mental discipline crumbled. "How is life on the ranch?" she asked, wanting to fill the silence with something other than her awareness of him. "Challenging but good. I have been working at the Double J for 5 years now. Started as just another ranch hand, but the owner, Mr. Jenkins, has been teaching me about managing the operation. He does not have children, and I think he is grooming me to eventually take over more responsibility." Pride colored his voice, and she could hear how much the work meant to him. "That sounds like a good opportunity." "It is, better than I ever expected to have." He glanced at her. "What about you, Miss Reed? Are you settling into Elko? Do you think you might stay?" "I am not sure," she said honestly. "I am taking things one day at a time. For now, I am grateful to have work and shelter." They reached the general store, and Olivia expected Quinn to bid her farewell and go inside to purchase his supplies, but instead he said, "Have you eaten dinner yet?" "No, but I was planning to make something simple in my room. There is a hot plate I can use. Would you consider joining me at the restaurant instead? The same place we went before. I would like to hear more about how you are doing, and I confess I have been eating alone too much lately." It would be nice to have company. Olivia knew she should decline. Every instinct she had developed through years of protecting herself warned her against getting involved with anyone, especially a man who had already shown her kindness she did not know how to repay. But those same instincts were exhausted from constant vigilance, and the prospect of a warm meal and friendly conversation was too appealing to resist. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Over beef stew and fresh bread, they talked more easily than they had during their first meeting. Quinn told her about growing up in Missouri, about losing his own parents to influenza when he was 17, about drifting west in search of work and opportunity, until he found himself in Nevada. His story had echoes of her own loss, displacement, the need to forge a new life from the ruins of the old, and she felt a kinship with him that went beyond their initial encounter. In turn, she told him more about her father, about how his gambling had consumed their family's resources and left them with nothing but debts. She did not mention the specific threats she had fled, but he seemed to understand what she was not saying. "You are safe here," he said quietly. "If anyone from California comes looking for you, they will have to go through the whole town. Elko takes care of its own, and you are one of us now." "Am I?" The question came out more vulnerable than she intended. "I have only been here a few weeks." "You are working hard, paying your own way, not causing trouble. That makes you one of us, and anyone who would say otherwise would have to answer to me." The fierce protectiveness in his tone made her breath catch. She was not accustomed to anyone standing up for her or claiming her as worth defending. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Quinn was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup between his hands. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "I suppose because I remember what it was like to be alone and scared in a new place with no one offering a hand up. Someone helped me when I first came to Nevada, Mr. Jenkins gave me a job when I had nothing and no one. He showed me that kindness matters, that we have an obligation to look out for each other. So when I saw you shivering outside that saloon, I knew I had to do something. And now, Olivia pressed, needing to understand, now that you know I am settled, you could walk away. You have fulfilled any obligation you might have felt. He met her eyes then, and the intensity in his gaze made her pulse quicken. I do not want to walk away, he said simply. If you are asking whether I would like to continue seeing you, getting to know you better, the answer is yes. But only if that is what you want too. I would never presume or push for something you are not comfortable with. Olivia's heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was dangerous territory, allowing someone to matter, allowing herself to hope for connection. But sitting across from Quinn, seeing the genuine care in his expression, she found herself wanting to take the risk. I would like that, she whispered. I would like to see you again. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Olivia felt something that might have been happiness. From that evening on, Quinn became a regular part of Olivia's life. He would ride into town on Saturday afternoons when his work at the ranch allowed, and they would have dinner together, take walks through Elko streets, or simply sit in the boarding house parlor talking until Mrs. Patterson pointedly cleared her throat to remind them of the late hour. He was always respectful, never pushing for more than Olivia was willing to give, but his interest was unmistakable, and her own feelings grew stronger with each meeting. February melted into March, and with the changing season came a softening in Elko's harsh landscape. Snow retreated from the streets, revealing mud and the promise of spring. Olivia's work at the dress shop continued, and Mrs. Foster began trusting her with more complex projects. She made a few acquaintances among the other women in town, not friends exactly, for she was still too guarded to let anyone truly close, but friendly faces who nodded greetings when they passed on the street. But it was her growing relationship with Quinn that dominated her thoughts and emotions. She found herself looking forward to Saturdays with an anticipation that was both thrilling and terrifying. He made her laugh with stories from the ranch, listened with genuine interest when she talked about her work, and treated her with a respect that she had never experienced from any man before. One Saturday in mid-March, Quinn arrived in town with a proposition. They were having dinner at their usual restaurant when he said, "Mr. Jenkins is having a gathering at the ranch next weekend. Nothing fancy, just some of the ranch hands and their families, some folks from town. There will be music and dancing and food. I would very much like it if you would come as my guest." Olivia's immediate instinct was to refuse. A social gathering meant meeting people, answering questions, being scrutinized. But she also recognized this as an important step. Quinn was inviting her into his world, introducing her to the people who mattered to him. Refusing would send a message about their relationship that she did not want to send. "I would need to ask Mrs. Foster for the afternoon off," she said slowly. "But if she agrees, then yes, I would like to come." Quinn's face lit up. "That is wonderful. I can drive you out to the ranch in the wagon. It is about 5 miles, but the road is decent this time of year." Mrs. Foster, when asked, agreed to give Olivia Saturday afternoon off, though she gave Olivia a long, measuring look that suggested she understood the significance of the request. "Quinn is a good man," she said. "Hard-working, honest, respectful. You could do much worse." The week leading up to the gathering passed with agonizing slowness. Olivia found herself anxious about making a good impression on Quinn's employer and colleagues, about whether she would fit into his world. She used some of her carefully saved money to purchase fabric for a new dress, nothing fancy, just simple cotton in a soft green that Mrs. Foster said brought out her eyes. She worked on it in the evenings by lamplight, making sure every stitch was perfect. When Saturday arrived, Olivia dressed with care, arranging her dark hair in a simple style that she hoped looked presentable. When Quinn arrived with the wagon, the approval in his eyes when he saw her made her cheeks flush. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his hand to help her up onto the wagon seat. "Thank you. You look very nice, too." It was true he wore clean denim trousers and a shirt that looked freshly pressed, with his dark hair neatly combed back from his face. The ride to the Double J Ranch took them through landscape that was beginning to show signs of spring. The harsh browns and grays of winter were giving way to tentative greens, and wildflowers were starting to bloom in sheltered spots. Quinn pointed out landmarks and told her about the ranch's history as they drove, and Olivia felt her anxiety easing slightly. The ranch itself was larger than she had imagined, with a sprawling main house, several barns and outbuildings, and corrals where horses moved restlessly. People were already gathered when they arrived, clusters of men and women talking and laughing while children ran between the buildings playing games. Quinn helped her down from the wagon and kept a protective hand at the small of her back as he guided her toward an older man who was clearly the host. "Mr. Jenkins, I would like you to meet Miss Olivia Reed. Olivia, this is Daniel Jenkins, owner of the Double J." Jenkins was perhaps 60, with weathered features and kind eyes. He shook Olivia's hand firmly. "Miss Reed, it is a pleasure. Quinn has spoken of you. Welcome to the Double J." "Thank you for having me, Mr. Jenkins. You have a beautiful ranch. We do our best. Let me introduce you to some folks." The next hour passed in a blur of names and faces. Olivia met ranch hands and their wives, townsfolk from Elko, a couple who ran a neighboring ranch. Everyone was friendly in the cautious way of Westerners meeting a stranger, polite but reserved until they could take your measure. She stayed close to Quinn, drawing courage from his solid presence beside her. As the afternoon progressed into evening, someone brought out a fiddle and another man produced a guitar, and music filled the air. Tables had been set up laden with food, roasted meat, vegetables, bread, pies, and everyone helped themselves family style. Olivia found herself seated between Quinn and a woman named Martha who worked as a cook at the ranch, and the conversation flowed easily around the table. After dinner, as dusk settled over the ranch, the music started up again and couples began to dance in the space that had been cleared in front of the barn. Quinn turned to Olivia with a slightly nervous expression. "Would you like to dance? I should warn you that I am not very accomplished, but I can manage the basics." Olivia's own dancing experience was limited, but she found herself nodding. Quinn led her into the dancing area and took her hand, placing his other hand carefully at her waist. The fiddle player launched into a waltz, and they began to move together. At first, Olivia was too focused on not stepping on his feet to think about anything else, but gradually she relaxed into the rhythm of the music and the movement. Quinn held her firmly but gently, guiding her through the steps, and she became aware of how close they were, of the warmth of his hand at her waist, of the way he looked down at her with an expression that made her heart race. "Are you having a good time?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, and realized it was true. Despite her initial anxiety, she was enjoying herself. The people at the ranch had been welcoming, the food had been delicious, and now she was dancing with Quinn under a sky full of emerging stars. It felt almost like a normal life, like the kind of life she had stopped believing she could have. "I am glad. I wanted you to see this place, to meet these people. The Double J has become home to me, and I wanted to share it with you." Something in his tone made Olivia look up at him more closely. There was an intensity in his expression that went beyond simple pleasure at sharing his world with her. "Quinn, what are you saying?" He glanced around, then guided her away from the other dancers toward a quieter area near the corral fence. The music continued behind them, but here they had relative privacy. He took both her hands in his and looked down at her with unmistakable seriousness. "Olivia, I know it has only been a few months since we met, but I need you to know that you have become very important to me. I think about you constantly. I look forward to Saturdays like a kid waiting for Christmas. When I am working during the week, I find myself wondering what you are doing, whether you are happy, whether you might be thinking of me too." Her breath caught. "I do think of you. More than I probably should." "Why should not you?" he asked, a slight smile touching his lips. "I hope you think of me. Because I have fallen in love with you, Olivia Reed, and I need you to know that before we go any further. I love your strength, your determination, the way you have built a life for yourself against all odds. I love your quiet humor and your kindness and the way you really listen when people talk. I love everything about you, and I am hoping that maybe you might feel something similar for me." Tears stung Olivia's eyes. No one had ever said such things to her before. "I am frightened," she whispered. "I have spent so long protecting myself, keeping walls up, not letting anyone close. The thought of letting those walls down, of being vulnerable, it terrifies me. I understand. Believe me, I understand. But Olivia, you do not have to be alone anymore. You do not have to protect yourself from everyone. I am not going to hurt you or abandon you. I am here, and I am not going anywhere." She searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity or hidden agenda, but all she saw was honest emotion and genuine care. And in that moment, she made a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. Quinn made a small sound of surprise, then wrapped his arms around her and returned the kiss with a tenderness that made her knees weak. It was her first kiss, though she had never admitted that to anyone, and it was everything she had secretly hoped a kiss would be: sweet and warm and full of promise. When they finally drew apart, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "Does that mean what I hope it means?" "It means I love you too," Olivia said, her voice shaking slightly. "I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself, but I do. I love you, James Quinn, and that frightens me more than anything ever has, but I am choosing to trust you anyway." He kissed her again, and this time she melted into it, allowing herself to feel the full force of the emotions she had been suppressing. When they returned to the gathering, hand in hand, several people noticed and smiled knowingly, but Olivia found she did not care. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere, like she had found not just shelter but a home. The ride back to Elko that night was quiet but comfortable, Olivia leaning against Quinn's shoulder as the wagon rolled through the darkness. When they reached her building, he helped her down and walked her to her door. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "I know you usually work Sundays at the dress shop, but maybe after you finish, we could take a walk or have dinner. Mrs. Foster has me working a half day tomorrow. I should be done by 2 o'clock. Then I will be here at 2, Quinn said. He kissed her once more, gently, then forced himself to step back. "Good night, Olivia. Sleep well." "Good night, Quinn." Olivia climbed the stairs to her room feeling like she was floating. She had allowed herself to fall in love, had allowed herself to be loved in return, and the world had not ended. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. The next few months unfolded with a sweetness that Olivia had never experienced before. She and Quinn saw each other as often as his work schedule allowed, usually twice a week, sometimes more. He taught her to ride horses, taking her on gentle trails around the ranch during his days off. She introduced him to some of the books she borrowed from the small lending library in town, and they would read passages aloud to each other on quiet evenings. Mr. Jenkins clearly approved of their relationship and began inviting Olivia to Sunday dinners at the ranch, treating her with a grandfatherly warmth that touched her deeply. The other ranch hands accepted her as part of Quinn's life, and gradually she began to feel connected to the community in a way she had never expected. In June, Quinn surprised her with a picnic by a creek about 3 miles from town, spreading a blanket in the shade of cottonwood trees while water burbled over smooth stones nearby. They ate sandwiches and fresh strawberries, talking and laughing, until Quinn grew suddenly quiet. "Olivia, I need to tell you something," he said, his expression serious. "Mr. Jenkins has decided to semi-retire. He wants to move to Virginia City to be closer to his sister, and he has asked me if I would be interested in purchasing the ranch from him. He is willing to carry the note and give me very favorable terms because he trusts me to maintain what he has built." Olivia's heart began to pound. This was a major life change, an enormous responsibility. "That is incredible, Quinn. It is what you have been working toward all these years." "It is," he agreed. "But it is also a huge commitment. The ranch requires constant work, constant attention. It is not just a job anymore, it would be my entire life. And that is why I need to ask you something before I give Mr. Jenkins my answer." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Olivia's breath stopped completely as he opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond set in it. "Olivia Reed, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You have brought joy and meaning into my life that I never expected to find. I want to build a future with you, to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to face whatever challenges come our way together. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face. 6 months ago, she had been shivering outside a saloon, alone and desperate, convinced that kindness was a fairy tale and that she would spend her life running from one disaster to the next. Now here was Quinn, offering her not just love but a partnership, a home, a future. "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger, and then they were kissing and crying and laughing all at once. He held her close, and Olivia felt all the broken, frightened pieces of herself beginning to knit together into something whole. They were married on a bright August morning in the small church in Elko. Mrs. Foster and Sarah from the dress shop helped Olivia make her wedding dress, a simple but elegant design in white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Mr. Jenkins walked her down the aisle, having insisted on giving her away since she had no family of her own. Most of the town turned out for the ceremony, which surprised and touched Olivia deeply. Quinn stood at the altar looking nervous and proud in his best suit, and when she joined him there and took his hands, she saw tears in his eyes. The minister led them through their vows, and when Quinn promised to love and cherish her for the rest of their lives, Olivia believed him with every fiber of her being. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Quinn cupped her face in his hands and kissed her tenderly while the church erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle together, Olivia caught sight of Mrs. Patterson in one of the pews, the stern landlady smiling and dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Even Mrs. Foster looked suspiciously misty-eyed. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food enough to feed half the county. There was music and dancing and toasts, and Olivia found herself surrounded by people who were genuinely happy for her and Quinn. It was everything a wedding should be: joyful and warm and full of hope for the future. As the sun began to set, Quinn took Olivia's hand and led her toward the main house, which was now theirs. Mr. Jenkins had moved to Virginia City the week before, leaving the ranch in their capable hands. Inside, the house was quiet after the noise of the celebration outside. Quinn closed the door behind them and turned to face his new wife. "Hello, Mrs. Quinn," he said softly. "Hello, Mr. Quinn," she replied, a smile playing at her lips. He crossed to her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. "Are you happy?" "I am happier than I ever thought possible," Olivia said honestly. "Sometimes I still cannot quite believe this is real, that I get to have this life with you." "It is real," Quinn assured her, kissing her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her lips. "And it is only going to get better from here." That night, in the bedroom that was now theirs, Quinn was gentle and patient with Olivia's inexperience, and their lovemaking was tender and passionate by turns. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Olivia felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. She was home. She was loved. She was safe. The first year of their marriage brought challenges and joys in equal measure. Running a ranch was demanding work, requiring long days and constant vigilance. There were sick cattle to tend, fences to mend, supplies to manage, workers to supervise. But Quinn was a natural leader, respected by the ranch hands, and Olivia found herself taking on more responsibilities as well. She discovered she had a talent for the business side of ranching, keeping the books, managing supplies, negotiating with buyers. She also took over the vegetable garden, expanding it to provide fresh produce for the ranch workers. Mrs. Foster, sorry to lose her best seamstress, wished her well and told her to visit any time. Quinn was a devoted husband, never taking Olivia for granted, always making sure she knew how much he loved and appreciated her. On their 6-month anniversary, he surprised her with a new coat, not sheepskin like the one he had first given her, but a beautiful wool coat in deep green that fit her perfectly. "For the woman who changed my life," he said as she tried it on, tears in her eyes. "Though I hope you will never have to shiver alone again." "Never," she agreed, kissing him, "because you will always be there to keep me warm." In the spring of their 2nd year of marriage, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The doctor in Elko confirmed it, and she could barely contain her excitement as she planned how to tell Quinn. That evening, when he came in from working with the horses, she met him at the door with a mysterious smile. "What is going on?" he asked, immediately picking up on her unusual mood. "You look like you are about to burst with a secret." "I am," she said, taking his hands and placing them on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, Quinn. In about 7 months, you are going to be a father." For a moment, he just stared at her, processing the information. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen, and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and protested. "We are having a baby. Olivia, that is the best news I have ever heard. Careful, put me down before you make me dizzy." He set her down gently, then knelt in front of her and pressed a kiss to her stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you." Olivia's pregnancy progressed smoothly. She continued working on the ranch as long as she was able, though Quinn became increasingly protective as her belly swelled. The ranch hands and their wives rallied around her, offering advice and support and handmade baby clothes. Mrs. Foster and Mrs. Patterson visited regularly, the two older women united in their determination to make sure Olivia had everything she needed. In November, on a cold but clear day, Olivia went into labor. The doctor was summoned from town, and several ranch wives arrived to help. Quinn paced outside the bedroom door for hours, refusing to go work or rest, until finally the doctor emerged with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Quinn. A healthy boy with a strong set of lungs. Mother and baby are both doing well. Quinn burst into the bedroom to find Olivia propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Come meet your son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the small red face peeking out from the blanket. The baby's eyes were closed, and one tiny fist was pressed against his mouth. "He is perfect," Quinn whispered. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names over the past months, but now, looking at their son, Olivia knew exactly what felt right. "Joseph," she said. "Joseph Daniel Quinn, after my father and Mr. Jenkins, because without their influence on our lives, we would not be here today." "Joseph Daniel Quinn," Quinn repeated, gently touching the baby's cheek. "Welcome to the world, son. Your mother and I love you more than you could ever know." Fatherhood transformed Quinn in ways that made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. He was devoted to little Joseph, waking in the night to walk with him when he cried, playing with him for hours, carrying him around the ranch to show him the horses and cattle. As Joseph grew from infant to toddler, Quinn taught him to ride by setting him on a horse in front of the saddle, holding him securely while they walked the gentlest trails. The ranch continued to prosper under their management. Quinn's reputation as a fair and skilled rancher grew throughout the region, and they were able to expand their herd and improve their facilities. Olivia's business acumen helped them weather economic downturns that destroyed other operations, and together, they built something that was truly theirs. When Joseph was 3, Olivia became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was more difficult, and she was forced to rest more than she liked. Quinn insisted she stop working entirely for the final months, hiring additional help to take over her responsibilities. In June, she gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, after Quinn's mother. With 2 children and a thriving ranch, their lives were full and busy. There were difficult moments: a drought one summer that tested their resources, a winter illness that swept through the workers and nearly took Joseph, the normal struggles of parenthood and partnership. But through it all, Quinn and Olivia faced each challenge together, their love deepening with each passing year. One evening, when Joseph was 7 and Grace was 4, Olivia stood on the porch of their house watching the sun set over the mountains. Quinn came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we have come," Olivia said. 10 years ago, I was shivering outside a saloon in Elko, convinced I was going to die alone and forgotten. And now look at us. We have a home, children, a life that feels almost too good to be true. It is not too good to be true. It is what you deserve, what we both deserve." He turned her to face him. "I have never regretted for one moment that I offered you my coat that night. It was the best decision I ever made." "Nobody had been kind before," Olivia said, echoing the words she had spoken that cold January night. "And then you came along and showed me that kindness existed, that people could be good, that I was worth caring about. You saved my life, Quinn, in every way that matters." "You saved mine too," he said seriously. "I was drifting before I met you, going through the motions but not really living. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to build something lasting. Everything good in my life comes from you." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, and from inside the house, they could hear Joseph and Grace laughing about something, the sound of their children's happiness, the sweetest music imaginable. As the years continued to pass, the Quinn family became a fixture in the community around Elko. Joseph grew into a serious, hard-working boy who loved the ranch and wanted nothing more than to follow in his father's footsteps. Grace was more artistic and social, often drawing pictures of the horses or putting on little plays for the ranch hands. Quinn and Olivia welcomed a third child when Grace was 6, another boy they named Thomas after one of Quinn's friends from Missouri who had died young. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Quinn developed a reputation as one of the best cattle breeders in Nevada, and buyers came from as far away as California to purchase his stock. Olivia managed the financial side with skill, investing their profits wisely and ensuring they always had reserves for difficult times. Together, they employed over a dozen ranch hands and provided steady work for several families in the area. But beyond their business success, it was the life they built together that mattered most. Quinn never stopped treating Olivia with the respect and kindness he had shown her that first night. He told her he loved her every day, supported her ideas and ambitions, and made sure she knew she was his partner in every sense of the word. Olivia, for her part, had shed the defensive shell she wore when they met and blossomed into a confident, capable woman who no longer feared the world or questioned her right to happiness. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Quinn took Olivia back to the spot where he had proposed, spreading a blanket by the creek just as he had all those years before. The children were spending the day with Mrs. Patterson, who had become like a grandmother to them, and for once Quinn and Olivia had time alone together. 15 years, Quinn said, pouring them both glasses of wine he had brought in a basket. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever. Both, Olivia agreed, accepting the glass. I cannot really remember what my life was like before you, but I also remember every detail of the day we met with perfect clarity. That was a cold night, Quinn said. I still remember how you looked, standing there shivering, trying so hard to be brave even though you were clearly terrified. I was certain I was going to die that night, Olivia admitted. Either from the cold or from whatever fate awaited a woman alone on the streets with no money and no prospects. And then you offered me your coat, and everything changed. Because you said nobody had been kind before, and I could not let that stand. I could not walk away and let you believe the world was entirely cruel. He took her hand, the gold band on her finger catching the sunlight. I am so grateful you gave me a chance, Olivia, that you trusted me even though you had every reason not to, that you let me love you. You made it easy to trust you, she said. You never pushed, never demanded more than I could give. You just kept showing up, being kind, proving that you meant what you said. How could I not fall in love with you? They made love there by the creek, the afternoon sun warm on their skin, reaffirming the bond that had only grown stronger through the years. Afterward, lying in Quinn's arms, Olivia felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. What is wrong? Quinn asked immediately, noticing her tears. Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. That is why I am crying. I am just so happy, Quinn, so grateful for this life we have built for our children, for you. Sometimes the magnitude of it overwhelms me. He kissed her forehead tenderly. I understand. I feel the same way. Every day I wake up beside you, I thank God for that cold night in Elko when our paths crossed. As their children grew into young adults, Quinn and Olivia began to step back slightly from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, training Joseph to eventually take over. He was 20 now, serious and responsible, and he had a good head for both the practical work and the business side. Grace, at 17, had met a young man from town, the son of the general store owner, and was being courted properly. Thomas, at 14, was still figuring out his path but showed promise as a horseman. Quinn was now in his early 50s, his dark hair streaked with silver, but he was still strong and vital. Olivia was 44, and while she had a few more lines around her eyes and mouth, Quinn insisted she was more beautiful than ever. They had weathered the challenges of life together: illnesses, financial pressures, the normal trials of raising children, and emerged with their love intact and even stronger. One autumn evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Quinn said, "Do you ever think about that night when we met? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had just walked past you?" "Sometimes," Olivia admitted. "But it is hard to imagine my life following any other path. It feels like meeting you was inevitable, like everything that came before was leading me to that moment outside the saloon." "I think about it often," Quinn said. "About how easily we might have missed each other, how a different choice or timing could have meant we never knew each other at all. It makes me treasure what we have even more, knowing how close we came to never having it." "Do you have any regrets?" Olivia asked. "About buying the ranch, about marriage, about any of it?" "Not a single one," Quinn said firmly. "This life with you, raising our children, building something lasting, it is more than I ever dreamed was possible. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Quinn, and I would not change a moment of our time together." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Inside the house, they could hear their children moving about, preparing dinner, arguing about something inconsequential. It was the sound of a full, rich life, and Olivia felt her heart swell with gratitude for all of it. As the years continued to advance, Quinn and Olivia gradually transitioned into the role of grandparents. Joseph married a woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch, and they had their first child, a girl named Olivia, in honor of her grandmother when Joseph was 23. Grace married her sweetheart and moved to town, where he was taking over his father's store, and soon blessed them with a grandson. Thomas eventually found his calling working with horses, developing a talent for training that rivaled his father's skill with cattle. Quinn and Olivia, now in their 60s, spent more time simply enjoying each other's company. They would take slow rides around the ranch, remembering the early days when they were building everything from scratch. They entertained their grandchildren, telling them stories about the old days and teaching them about ranching. They traveled occasionally, visiting California and seeing the places Olivia had fled from all those years ago, though now she could face those memories without fear because she knew she had a home to return to through it all. Their love remained the foundation of everything. Quinn still reached for Olivia's hand when they walked, still kissed her good night every evening, still told her he loved her multiple times a day. Olivia still felt her heart flutter when she saw him, still found comfort and safety in his arms, still marveled at how one act of kindness had transformed her entire life. One winter morning, 25 years after they had married, Olivia woke to find Quinn already up and dressed, standing by the bedroom window looking out at the snow-covered ranch. She joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "What are you thinking about so early in the morning?" she asked. "About how blessed I am," he said, turning to face her. "I have lived a good life, Olivia, a full life. I have meaningful work, children and grandchildren I adore, friends I respect, but all of that pales in comparison to what I have with you. You are the center of everything good in my world, and you are the center of mine," she replied. "Do you remember what I said that first night, that nobody had been kind before? I remember every word from that night. It was true then," Olivia said. "Nobody had shown me genuine kindness without expecting something in return. Nobody had looked at me and seen someone worth caring about. And then you came along and changed everything. You taught me that I was worthy of love, that good people existed, that hope was not foolish. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have." "You gave me the same," Quinn said. "I was drifting before you, existing but not truly living. You gave me purpose and passion and a reason to build something lasting. Everything I am, everything I have accomplished, has been possible because you were beside me." They held each other in the early morning light, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love story that had lasted decades. Outside, the ranch was beginning to stir, with ranch hands heading out to tend the animals and smoke rising from chimneys. The world they had built together continued on, a testament to what could grow from a single act of kindness on a cold winter night. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that time brings. Quinn's joints grew stiff on cold mornings, and Olivia's eyes were not as sharp as they once were. But they adapted, supporting each other through the challenges of aging with the same partnership that had characterized their entire marriage. Joseph ran the ranch now, with Quinn serving as an advisor, and their grandchildren were having children of their own, making Quinn and Olivia great-grandparents. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their entire extended family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were dozens of people, now children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, plus ranch hands who had become like family over the years and friends from town. Tables were set up in the yard just as they had been for Quinn and Olivia's wedding, though the guest list was far larger now. Joseph stood to offer a toast, his own hair starting to gray at the temples. "To my parents, who have shown all of us what love and commitment truly mean. You have built not just a successful ranch but a legacy of kindness, hard work, and devotion that will continue for generations. Thank you for being an example of how to live a good life and love each other well. To Quinn and Olivia." "To Quinn and Olivia," the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Quinn stood, helping Olivia to her feet beside him, and looked out at the assembled group, the fruit of their union and their hard work. "Thank you all for coming today. Olivia and I are humbled by your presence and your love. 40 years ago, I married the woman who had changed my life from the moment I met her. She was shivering outside a saloon in Elko, and I offered her my coat. Such a simple gesture, but it led to this, to all of you, to this life we have built together. Never underestimate the power of kindness, of reaching out to help someone in need. You never know how one act might change not just one life but generations." Olivia squeezed his hand, then added her own words. "I was lost when Quinn found me. I had given up hope that good things were possible. And then this man showed me that kindness existed, that I was worth caring about, that love was real and lasting. He gave me everything: a home, a family, a purpose, and 40 years of happiness that I treasure more than I can express. Thank you, Quinn, for seeing me when I was invisible, for caring when no one else did, for loving me every single day of our marriage. You are my hero, my partner, and my best friend." There was not a dry eye in the crowd as they kissed, this couple who had defied the odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of their individual struggles. The celebration continued into the evening, with music and dancing and stories shared across generations. As night fell and guests began to depart or settle into the guest rooms and bunkhouses, Quinn and Olivia slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in the rocking chairs they had purchased a decade earlier, holding hands and watching the stars emerge in the vast Nevada sky. 40 years, Olivia mused. It has gone so quickly. And yet we have lived lifetimes together, Quinn said. Raised children, built a business, created a legacy. Not bad for a cowboy and a shivering stranger. Olivia laughed softly. Not bad at all. Do you think we will have 40 more? I hope so, Quinn said. Though even if we do not, I am grateful for every moment we have had. You made my life worth living, Olivia. Everything good traces back to you. And everything good in my life traces back to that cold night when you refused to walk past someone in need, Olivia countered. You saved me, Quinn. In every way a person can be saved. They sat together as they had so many nights before, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of companionship. The ranch was quiet now, the celebrations wound down, but the love that had built all of this remained as strong as ever. Quinn and Olivia lived many more years together, continuing to be active parts of their extended family's life. They attended weddings and baptisms, welcomed new great-great-grandchildren, and watched with pride as the ranch continued to thrive under Joseph's management. They took short trips when their health allowed, revisiting Elko to see how the town had changed and grown, always stopping to look at the place where they had first met. One spring morning, when Quinn was 78 and Olivia was 70, they rode out together on gentle horses to their favorite spot by the creek. The cottonwood trees had grown massive over the decades, providing deep shade, and wildflowers bloomed in profusion along the water's edge. They spread a blanket and sat together, Quinn's arm around Olivia's shoulders. "This is my favorite place on earth," Olivia said, "because this is where you proposed, where you promised to love me forever." "And I have kept that promise," Quinn said, "every single day for over 50 years now." "You have. You are the most honorable man I have ever known, Quinn. You say what you mean and you follow through on your commitments. It is one of the 1,000 things I love about you." They talked for hours that afternoon, reminiscing about their long life together, laughing about the challenges they had overcome and the joys they had shared. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Quinn pulled Olivia close and kissed her with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding day. "I love you, Olivia Quinn. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, James Quinn. Thank you for giving me a life worth living. Thank you for being kind when nobody had been kind before." They rode back to the ranch house as evening fell, hand in hand as they had been for over 5 decades. That night, they fell asleep in each other's arms, just as they had done countless times before. Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, at the age of 81. He had been working with Joseph on ranch business that afternoon, had enjoyed dinner with Olivia and several of their children and grandchildren, and had gone to bed telling Olivia he loved her. It was the kind of death most people hope for, quick, painless, and at the end of a long, full life. Olivia grieved deeply for the loss of her partner, but she also recognized how blessed they had been to have so many years together. At Quinn's funeral, attended by what seemed like half of Nevada, she stood beside his coffin and spoke about the man who had changed her life. "My husband was the best man I ever knew," she said, her voice strong despite her tears. "He showed me what kindness looked like, what love could be, what it meant to live with integrity and purpose." On a cold night in 1883, he saw a stranger in need and offered help without expectation of reward. That one act of compassion led to a love story that spanned over 50 years and created the family and legacy we celebrate today. Quinn, my darling, thank you for everything. Thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me. I will carry you in my heart until we meet again. Olivia lived for 5 more years after Quinn's death, remaining active in her children's and grandchildren's lives. She spent her days tending her garden, reading and writing letters to the vast network of family members scattered across the West. She spoke often of Quinn, keeping his memory alive through stories and shared wisdom. On quiet evenings, she would sit in her rocking chair on the porch and talk to him, telling him about her day and expressing her ongoing love. On a warm June evening, surrounded by several of her children and grandchildren, Olivia closed her eyes for the last time at the age of 86. Her last words were, "I can see him. Quinn is waiting for me." She was buried beside Quinn on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, beneath a cottonwood tree that provided shade and beauty. Their joined headstone bore a simple inscription chosen by their children, James and Olivia Quinn. He offered kindness to a stranger. She said nobody had been kind before. Together they built a love that lasted forever. The Double J Ranch continued to thrive under the management of subsequent generations. Each one taught the values of hard work, integrity, and compassion that Quinn and Olivia had instilled. The story of how their great-great-great-grandparents had met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as a reminder that small acts of kindness can change lives and create legacies that endure long after we are gone. In Elko, Nevada, where it all began, a small plaque was eventually placed near the spot where Quinn first saw Olivia shivering in the cold. It reads, "In memory of James Quinn and Olivia Reed Quinn, whose love story began here in 1883 and reminds us that kindness is never wasted and love can transform everything." The Wild West that Quinn and Olivia had known rough, dangerous, and unforgiving had gradually been tamed over the decades, transformed into something more civilized. But the values they had lived by remained timeless. Work hard, treat people fairly, extend kindness to those in need, and above all, love deeply and without reservation. Their story was one of redemption and hope, proof that no matter how dark your circumstances or how lost you might feel, one person's compassion can illuminate the path forward. Quinn had not known that offering his coat to a freezing stranger would lead to the greatest love of his life, to children and grandchildren, and a legacy that would span generations. He had simply seen someone who needed help and responded with basic human decency. And Olivia, who had believed herself unworthy of kindness, who had been taught by harsh experience that people were cruel and life was suffering, had learned that love was real and that she deserved happiness. She had taken the courage offered by Quinn's simple gesture and built from it a life of meaning and purpose. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren carried forward the lessons they had learned from Quinn and Olivia's example. They ran the ranch with integrity, treated their employees fairly, contributed to their communities, and most importantly, extended kindness to strangers in need. They understood that they existed because, on one cold January night in 1883, a cowboy had refused to walk past a shivering woman and had instead offered her his coat. And so the legacy continued, rippling outward through time and space, touching lives that Quinn and Olivia would never know but had influenced nonetheless. Their love story became part of the fabric of the West, a testament to the transformative power of compassion and the enduring strength of true love. In the end, it was not the success of the ranch or the wealth they accumulated or the respect they earned that mattered most. It was the love they shared, the family they created, and the example they set. Quinn and Olivia Quinn had taken their individual pain and loneliness and forged from it something beautiful and lasting. They had proven that nobody is beyond redemption, that everyone deserves kindness, and that love, when given freely and nurtured carefully, can overcome any obstacle and endure through any hardship. Their story ended as all stories must, with death claiming first one and then the other. But in a deeper sense, their story never ended at all. It lived on in every descendant who carried their blood, in every act of kindness performed in their memory, in every couple who looked at their example, and believed that lasting love was possible. Quinn and Olivia had started with nothing but a coat offered in compassion and a tentative acceptance of that kindness. From those humble beginnings, they had built everything that mattered. And on certain cold winter nights in Nevada, when the wind howls down from the mountains and the temperature drops below freezing, some say you can still see them, a tall cowboy and a slender woman, walking hand in hand through the streets of Elko, their love warming them against any chill, proof that some bonds transcend even death and that true kindness is never forgotten.